this is a hard movie to talk about without spoiling the entire premise. So if you haven't watched it yet and it's important to you, don't watch this until after you've seen it. Hi guys! Today I want to discuss Brian De Palma's 1972 movie Sisters. You may have realized by now that I am a very big Brian De Palma fan. I really enjoy his storytelling. I love the little things he does in the movies when it comes to using split screen, the way he's sometimes very meta with a movie within a movie. Like in this one, there's a TV show within the movie. You don't always know what's happening until afterward. His attention to detail I really enjoy, and I just love the surreal quality of his work. It is very visually pleasing to me and very inspiring creatively. So I am very much a De Palma fan. So we have the opening credits, which has that sinister B-movie type music that plays over it, and we see these little fetuses, feti, I don't know what you would call them, but they are obviously conjoined twins. And I have a very lengthy interest in twin stuff. There's a book by Judith Rossner called Attachments that I read, and it was so fascinating to me. It's about two girls who decide they are going to marry two Siamese twins. So they end up as like a permanent foursome, and just the dynamics between all these characters, the whole story is just enthralling. There is a book that I have reviewed before by Thomas Tryon, The Other. That one involves twins. I've just always been very fascinated by the concept of twins, and especially the concept of twins in horror. And of course, we also have The Dark Half by Stephen King, which is another twin story. Brian De Palma came up with this movie. He came up with the story behind it, and it's very short and sweet. It's about an hour and a half, this movie. We start out with a TV show, game show, called Peeping Toms, and it's kind of like a candid camera, and the contestants have to guess what people are going to do given a situation that they are watching. There's a hidden camera. This starts out where the guy is watching a girl who's blind undress, and they have to decide, is he gonna walk away? Is he gonna watch her? I think there was a third option, but they have to kind of guess what a society member would do in this situation, and then whether they're right or wrong, the contestants get the money or the actors get the money. And they were incorrect, and Margot Kidder is the blind girl, the blind model. Her name is Danielle Breton, and she is French-Canadian. The man, Philip Wood, who is played by Lisle Wilson, they win because the contestants both guessed that he would sit there and watch her. And he does not. He leaves the room. So they win prizes, and they kind of go out on a date. During this date, Margot Kidder, Danielle, she is approached by her ex-husband, who looks kind of crazy. He's got these huge magnifying glasses, and he says, "Come with me, we have to get out of here." And she's like, "No, I'm on a date with this nice young man." And he ends up following them home, and he's kind of waiting outside her apartment. He's just obviously stalking her. And this whole thing is very Alfred Hitchcock-esque. And I believe Brian De Palma has even acknowledged that he was kind of going for a Hitchcockian type theme. And the movie, I believe, is scored by someone who also worked with Hitchcock. I'm not sure the name. I'll insert it up here.
You know, there's so few people that I have any feeling for. Not just men, you know. Ever since my sister left.
Danielle at one point tells Philip, when she's asking him out on this date, and he's hesitant, she says, "I don't bite." And something to note that pops up throughout the story, her prize for winning the game show is a boxed cutlery set. And this factors in several times in the movie. So she has a box of cutlery. Philip and Danielle go back to her apartment. We see a character across the alley, and it is Jennifer Salt. She plays the reporter, Grace Collier, who lives across the alley, and her hair is one of the worst movie haircuts I've ever seen, and every time I watch this, it's so distracting and so terrible. It's bad hair. It's really bad hair. And she is an investigative reporter, and she's living across the way, and she's kind of nosy, and she can see into Danielle's apartment. So this has been established. We also know that the husband is waiting outside, kind of hanging around, so Philip says, "I will go and pretend to leave and sneak back up to your apartment, and we can finish our date." So he does that. The husband leaves because he thinks that Philip is gone, and Philip sneaks back in. He brings the cutlery with him, and they have sex on the couch and fall asleep. The next morning, Danielle goes into the bathroom and she's taking some medication, and we don't know what for, but she's obviously upset and unwell. Her reaction when she wakes up is someone who very desperately needs medication immediately. So she goes into the bathroom, takes her pills, she leaves 2 more on the sink, and then she goes about her business. Philip overhears her, and she's talking to her sister in the bedroom. And the sister, she had briefly mentioned her sister Dominique on their ferry ride to her apartment, saying that her sister has gone away. So we find out that the sister is there, it's their birthday, and, you know, they're arguing about Philip being there, and Dominique is jealous, and you can tell that Danielle's trying to talk her down, and Dominique is being surly and kind of bitchy. So he gets dressed in the bathroom, and he knocks the rest of her pills into the sink on accident. His shirt just kind of, when he's putting it on, the shirt brushes against it, and they fall into the drain. So she comes into the bathroom looking for her pills, doesn't find them, and she asks him to go run out and get her some more, because she is just in horrible pain, and she needs them. She's, you know, he doesn't ask her why, he doesn't ask her anything, he just goes to get them filled. So he goes and gets them filled, he buys her a birthday cake, and he puts both of their names on it. He asks the cake ladies to put Danielle and Dominique on this cake. So Philip prepares the cake with candles and those old candle holders that parents used to have around the house, and I can't imagine that a woman like Danielle would have candles and little candle holders in her kitchen just hanging out, but somehow he gets them. So he prepares the cake, he lights the candles, she is passed out on the fold-out bed, and she's under the blankets, and he brings it over to her, and he takes one of the knives from the cutlery kit that she won, the cutlery set, and he takes a huge butcher knife, puts it next to the cake, he brings it to her, positions it so that she is able to grab the handle and cut the cake. I don't know why you would sneak up on someone who is sleeping with something that is aflame and a big-ass knife, but especially someone you don't know. I mean, I'm one of those jumpy people who I would be startled awake and flail and probably, you know, fling the cake somewhere, and there would be damage done. So one of the most amazing shots comes from this surprise birthday cake incident.
Surprise. Hey, now you know you're not supposed to cut the cake until you make a wish and blow out the candles.
It's terrifying. It is a terrifying scene, and there's a lot of stabbing and blood splatter, and the blood is very red and paint-like. It's not good blood, but it's effective, and the music is cacophonous, and there's just a whole bunch of what's happening. Philip is crawling all over the floor, leaving a blood trail. He goes to the kitchen and we have a nice split screen shot so that we can see over Philip's shoulder what is happening. We see what's happening from his perspective, but then we see across the street Grace's perspective, and she sees this man kind of going up into the window a little bit and writing help on the window in blood. And so we see it from both sides. We see him writing it and we see her able to read it, which is really cool. I really, really like that effect. Her husband comes and he's like, what is this? He sees the knife, the bloody knife, he sees this blood trail, and he's like, we have to clean this up. You have to help me. And she's like, it's Dominique, it's Dominique. And he's confused. He's like, Dominique was here? And she's like, yeah, she was here, but she's not anymore. And Grace has called to report a murder. So during this whole scene where Danielle and her husband are trying to clean up the murder scene, Grace has already called the cops and they are on their way. So she is going to go meet the cops at the apartment. So there's a whole big, like, tense, will they, won't they, get away with it? Is Grace going, are they going to run into each other? All this stuff. And it's all split screen, so we can see what's happening simultaneously. We see the apartment getting cleaned. We see Grace dealing with the cops. They hide Philip's body in the couch. It's a fold-up bed, so they put his body in there and fold him up into the couch, which I always thought was a very clever way to hide a body. I'm assuming they're not the first to have done that, but it's really clever. It's all very tense, and Grace is, you know, insistent, and the cops are kind of, they don't believe her, and they actually don't like Grace because she is an investigative reporter and she has written some very fiery pieces about the police, and they don't appreciate that. So they're taking all of this with a grain of salt, and they get in, and Danielle lets them in, lets them look around. I don't think they would normally let someone like Grace just enter the building and you know, snoop around herself. So they're trying to rein her in and they're trying to keep her calm. They end up kind of directing her to the couch to sit down, and she sits there, and it's so perfect.
Thank you, Miss Collier. I know you're doing your best to help the forces of justice, but they will be better served by your sitting down.
That body is here somewhere, and she knows it.
How many rooms do you have, Miss Breton?
There's the living room here, and then the bathroom and kitchen, and then past is the bedroom.
She basically says, the body is here somewhere, and I know it. And she is currently sitting on the body, and the back of the couch has like a little red splotch of blood that has started to seep through. I think that Jennifer Salt and Margot Kidder play off each other so well. The whole scene where, you know, Grace is kind of out of control, and she's like, I know what I saw. How can you not know anything about this? And Margot Kidder is just very, very relaxed about the whole thing and calm, and, you know, saying, I can understand. She's being very patronizing to Jennifer Salt, and it's just, their dynamic is really, really good. You know, no body is found, obviously, and Grace still thinks that something is up, so she starts investigating. She hires a private investigator who's played by Charles Durning, and he is also in some other De Palma films. But Charles Durning gets into the apartment. He finds a file and he brings it out, and Grace is looking through it, and it's about the Blanchion twins. And the Blanchion twins were Canada's first Siamese twins, and that would be Danielle and Dominique. So Grace has this whole new lead to go on. She contacts the Times magazine person who wrote a story about the Blanchion twins, and he shows her some old footage, which I also really enjoy because I like that little newscasty look to the documentary, and it's a very dramatic documentary.
Where surgeons, reluctant to risk an operation on their delicate spinal conjoinment, decided to let them live as one. But whether as twins through life,
That's
or as
Danielle's
two
husband.
separate beings created with
The guy who's showing her all this footage, he says that he heard some information that he cannot really confirm, but he got it from one of the people from the institute where the Blanchard twins were, and there was a need to separate the twins, and it caused Dominique to die on the operating table. So Dominique is no longer alive. So whenever Danielle is talking about Dominique, there is no Dominique. And there was a really good scene, I forgot to mention, or when Danielle is getting ready, she's in the bathroom, and there is a shot in front of the medicine cabinet where the mirror, because you know the mirror opens, it breaks into two, there's a split down her face. It's just a very subtle indication of a split. So I like little details like that. So it's like split right down her face to represent her two halves.
I just saw a man viciously and repeatedly stabbed. It was in that apartment up there, 3R. The name is Breton. The man is probably dying if he's not dead already, so I think the best thing to do is to get up there.
So Danielle and her husband end up going to the institute, a mental institute that he works at, and Grace follows. She gets caught, and it's very, very scary because Danielle's husband keeps referring to her as a patient. And so that undermines everything she says, that she's an investigative reporter, that there was a murder, that there was all this weird behavior, that Danielle is not who she says she is, and the people who work at the hospital don't take her word for it because the doctor has said that she is a new patient who is delusional. And that whole gaslighting thing is very scary to be, I mean, think about being in a situation like that. No one knows you're there. The doctor is the authority figure. So I find that part to be very, very scary. So then we have this, like a fever dream, where Grace has been injected with some type of drug. Danielle's husband is trying to brainwash her and trying to get her to not remember the body, not remember the murder, you know, forget all this ever happened. But then it also brings her, she somehow experiences what it was like to be Dominique, attached to Danielle. And there are all these memories, and it's so surreal, and it is like a fever dream. And we have all these little characters that pop up in other roles. It's Grace's mom, who is a character, she pops up. The private investigator. They're going through the separation of Dominique and Danielle. They take the meat cleaver out of that cutlery box, and they separate them that way. And Danielle and Grace are kind of connected in some weird way, and they can experience things together. And it's a really interesting scene. Very, very cool. So we find out Emile, I keep saying Danielle's husband. His name is Emile. He's the doctor. Emile tells Danielle that, you know, I guess my plan has not worked. He and Danielle had a relationship. Dominique was jealous of it. And now that they're separated and Dominique is dead, Danielle feels guilty, and any man that she sleeps with, she sees as Emile, and she immediately wants to kill him. That's why she killed Philip. So he is forever, I guess, forbidden from being her husband because she hates him subconsciously, and she will try to kill him. And she ends up stabbing him, and he dies. It's a pretty glorious death, really bloody, really dramatic. Poor Grace has witnessed all of this. It happens on her lap, basically. And it's really glorious, and she's just broken. And then when she tries to talk to the police later, the whole brainwashing has worked, and she says, there was no murder, there was no body, I'm of no help to you. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the movie. It's really good. I love the grittiness of New York. I love movies like that. I love the kind of suspenseful Hitchcockian vibe that it has. I like the characters. It's a very small cast, but they're all really good actors. It is convoluted a little bit with all the information that you get in that fever dream and the weird connection that Danielle and Grace have. It's not completely evident how that's possible, but you just kind of have to go with it. So other than that, I think it's a really strong movie, really good movie. I don't really hear anyone talk about this one. It might be a cult film at this point, and it is several years earlier than Carrie. So, you know, Brian De Palma was not as big when this came out, and I love the imagery that we get from the release of this movie, all of the promotional stuff, where it says that it's so shocking, a 15-minute delay will be had to let people recover from the movie. And they say, don't tell your friends, you know, don't ruin the surprise. All of the marketing for this is very intriguing, because I want to see a movie where there's a 15-minute recovery period between showings. I mean, that's unheard of, and it makes you wonder what is so bad about this movie. And that, and the fact that there's this big, deep, dark secret, you know, which, I don't know, you can kind of predict it when you're watching it. Have a spooky day.